Zach Hadel is a man that needs no introduction. He is a very, very well-known figure in the animating space on YouTube and on Adult Swim with his popular cartoon series Smiling Friends. And on his YouTube channel, Psychic Pebbles, he's run an old podcast, which isn't running anymore, but it was called Schmucks. I decided to listen to an episode because I was just curious, because he interviewed some nobody named Michael Stevens of Vsauce. I don't know. He talks about some things on the internet. I don't know. I kid. I know about Vsauce, which is another creator that I really like to listen to. I learn a lot more about things in general, and that's kind of how I get curious about things that I would otherwise never think about, including the human experience. I'm sure that you've heard that Michael has put himself in solitary confinement to study how the human brain is affected in long durations of unfiltered isolation in its purest form. On the podcast, he's opened up and said that he's basically just lost track of time. He didn't know if he was awake or if he was actually asleep and dreaming, because his dreams just became him being in solitary confinement. And that was a little bit trippy for him. But when the experiment was done, he felt pretty grounded. He was able to readjust pretty quickly. He was able to get back into his regular routine of things. And he was able to have conversations with his wife. That is, normal conversations, thankfully. It's important to mention that something else that kept him pretty grounded was the fact that this experiment that he wanted to conduct was also being filmed. He was able to keep that in the back of his mind, and that gave him some comfort in a way that this is being done for a reason, and he's going to get good results after doing all of this. That was the main driving force that was keeping him sane, reminding him that something good is going to come out of this, because we're learning more. So he, for the most part, turned out fine. That isn't the case for a lot of people. I'm sure you've heard of this internet story about Nasubi. Now, that's Japanese for eggplant, but Nasubi was actually a person. That was the nickname given to Tomoaki Hamatsu, excuse me. That's how you say his name. Tomoaki Hamatsu, I believe. And he was a part of a game show called A Life in Prizes. And the premise of the show, he was locked inside of a room for over a year, and he had to get as many sweepstakes, I think, as possible. And the more prizes he won, the more valuable the prizes were. Well, the quicker he would be able to win and get the money to leave and not have to go through this whole ordeal. They had to do a lot of circle jerk to make the torture basically go longer. And at the very end, he was suddenly and dramatically exposed to an audience of people, and he was scared and confused. And he wasn't really able to interact with people normally. I hope he's doing okay nowadays, but it seems that after that event, things didn't really go well for him. He wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and this certainly didn't help, unfortunately. But here's hoping that Nasubi is doing well. But hearing stories like this got me thinking about something that I had seen years ago, and I'm talking when I was a teen years ago. I'm 23. Honestly, yeah, I think I had started watching this about 10 years ago at this point. I was first exposed to it for a school assignment. I think the episode is called The Monsters Are Due at Maple Street. I kind of fucked it up and I said The Monsters Are Due on Elm Street, which is not a real episode. I mixed up that one with Nightmare at Elm Street. But no, the actual episode is called The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, which is a Twilight Zone episode. The first episode was about a man. He was just walking through town, and nobody was there. The town was basically clean, I guess, but no one was there. He was the only person in that entire town, and he thought that, well, was there a bomb? But that doesn't make sense, because if there was an explosion, then how are all these buildings doing just fine? And he looks through the stores, he goes to the movie theater, and he sees this promotional film for the Air Force. And he looks at his clothes and he's like, holy shit, I'm Air Force. I'm in the Air Force. And he goes through this whole figuring out who he is because he doesn't remember who he is. There's no one there to remind him what his story is, what his deal is. He starts thinking that he's the last man on Earth and that everyone is dead. He's the only one alive, somehow. And he keeps descending into this loop of madness after finding out he's in the Air Force. And all of a sudden, he wakes up, and there's a crowd of people next to him, reassuring him that, brother, you're fine. Everything was controlled, and all of this is just a figment of your imagination. Now, what the hell was going on here? Well, it turns out that there are a lot of unknowns in terms of being an astronaut and going to the moon. That was the reveal at the end. He was an astronaut, putting himself in isolation. He knew full well that he was going to be in isolation for a long period of time, because he was going to fly a moon mission by himself in a small capsule where he would have no one to physically interact with. The human mind is just so fascinating. I mean, humans are first and foremost social creatures, and we crave that human connection when we're alone, not just in our room by ourselves. We don't really have any friends to hang out with for today. I'm not talking about that, but rather, you are alone, you're on a desert island, you're in the woods, there's no way to contact anyone, and you only have yourself to keep company. The effects that has on you, that is just so utterly fascinating. Anyways, I was kind of thinking about that after I listened to that podcast, that Schmucks podcast episode with Vsauce. So I figured I'd just mention it here, and rest assured this will not be the only mention of the Twilight Zone on this channel, and you will definitely hear more discussions on episodes that I'm thinking about, episodes that I had seen in the past, even those from the other clone shows that I've seen, like Outer Limits. I love all of that stuff. I love learning about things of the occult, things of grand fantasy and science fiction, and how that kind of plays into the human experience, the psychology, and just everything in between. But anyways, I figured I'd just mention that today just because of the Schmucks episode. But hope you guys found that interesting. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again very soon.